He told her he was out of town on business, but the suite he booked had candles, champagne, and framed photos from their wedding. The concierge smiled at her and said, "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Vance." She hadn't ordered any of it. Someone else was meant to walk through that door, but she got there first. Have you ever stopped arguing because you knew the truth didn't need defending anymore? Have you ever walked into a room and realized you weren't supposed to be the one standing there? Welcome to Mr. Charles' Stories, where quiet strength speaks louder than betrayal and dignity writes its own ending. If you believe truth doesn't need to shout to be heard, like this story, share it with someone who deserves better and drop a comment below. She knew, and that was enough. Now, let's begin. Averin Kael Vance had long stopped asking questions, not because she believed everything Karen said, but because she had learned what silence could teach her that answers never could. After 10 years of marriage, she knew his patterns. She knew his tone when he lied. She knew his posture when guilt tried to wear charm as a mask. And this time, she didn't need to press for clarity. It found her on its own. Their 10th anniversary was approaching. She had been planning something simple, an art gallery dinner, maybe just a weekend in Charleston like they used to. But before she could even bring it up, he said it. "Next weekend I'll be in Colorado Springs, startup retreat thing. 2 days, I'll fly back Monday." She didn't question it, didn't flinch, just nodded. But the hotel did something he hadn't accounted for. They copied her email, like they always had. 3 days before the anniversary, she received it. Subject, suite confirmation, happy anniversary, Mr. and Mrs. Vance. Dear guests, we are thrilled to welcome you again to Suite 41C, your turn down. Service has been scheduled complete with champagne, rose petals, and anniversary photo decor, as requested. Averin read it 3 times, then once more. She closed the email, got up from her desk, walked to the window, and stood there, not shaking, not tearing up, just breathing. She didn't call him. She didn't respond to the hotel. She booked a flight, and that was all. The morning she arrived, the city was colder than she remembered. That Colorado winter chill that pressed through coats and whispered truths into your bones. She wore soft gloves, low boots, and a scarf he'd given her 3 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on her. The hotel lobby was busy but quiet, filled with polite voices and the clink of breakfast silverware. When she gave her name at the desk, the concierge beamed. "Mrs. Vance, welcome back. We've prepared everything just as your husband requested." She smiled gently. "Thank you." The key card slid across the counter. She picked it up and walked toward the elevator, calm as if heading to a spa, not the burial site of 10 years of loyalty. She didn't feel the nerves until the elevator doors closed. Even then, it wasn't panic. It was a stillness, a decision forming in her chest. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to yell. She was going to observe. The suite smelled of roses and warm linen. There was champagne in a silver bucket, framed wedding photos on the nightstand, soft classical music playing low through the suite's built-in system. Everything screamed effort. Someone had cared to recreate their wedding night. But it wasn't for her. That was the sharpest betrayal. Not the physical act, not even the lies. It was the use of her memories to impress someone else. Her taste, her history, her style. Everything in this suite was Averin, but not meant for her. She walked to the balcony doors and slid them open. The wind hit her with truth. It was quiet up here. Too quiet for confrontation. Too quiet for theatrics. She didn't check her phone. She didn't call anyone. She sat on the armchair near the window, legs crossed, back straight, hair falling loosely over one shoulder. Her wedding band caught a sliver of sunlight, and she waited, not like a wife with questions, but like a woman who already had her answer. Nearly 2 hours passed. Room service came and went. She poured herself a glass of water but didn't sip it. And then, the hotel phone rang. She let it ring twice before answering. "Mrs. Vance," the receptionist said warmly, "your husband has just arrived." She took a breath. Send them up. No tremble, no hesitation. She stood, adjusted the belt on her wool coat, and sat back down. She didn't hide in the bathroom. She didn't pour wine on the bed. She didn't throw anything. She waited, like a verdict. The knock came quickly. Then, the beep of a key card. The door clicked open. She heard laughter first, a woman's laugh, high, careless, then a familiar voice, low, smooth, confident, until it wasn't, because the moment he walked in, he saw her. So did the woman. Rena Voigt stopped mid-laugh, her hand still on Kauren's chest. She stared at Averin like a child caught stealing candy. Kauren's entire posture deflated. He froze. The silence burned. Averin didn't flinch. She looked straight at her husband, then at Rena, and spoke softly. "I believe," she said, "this suite was booked for 2. The room stayed frozen. Averin didn't move from the armchair. Kauren's face shifted, from shock to guilt to disbelief, as if scrambling to land on the right reaction. Rena stepped back, instinctively tugging at the hem of her dress. Her face flushed, her eyes darted between Averin and Kauren, like she was waiting for him to say something that would undo this. What are you doing here?" Kauren finally stammered. Averin tilted her head slightly. "You booked our anniversary suite, Kauren. I assumed you remembered." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't blink too fast. She didn't break the air with drama. She let the silence drag, let the awkwardness do its job. Rena's grip on her purse tightened. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "I swear, I didn't know." Averin turned her eyes to her with quiet grace. "Don't flatter yourself. You weren't important enough to be warned." That hit. Rena's mouth fell open slightly, then shut again. Kauren took a step forward. "Averin, wait!" But she was already rising from the chair, not hurried, not flustered. She picked up her coat from the back of the chair, slid it over her shoulders with the same calm she used to style investor pitch decks. She didn't look like a wife about to collapse. She looked like someone about to walk into a better chapter. At the door, she paused. "I'm not leaving in anger," she said. "I'm leaving in clarity." And with that, she walked out. She didn't slam the door. She didn't look back. The elevator ride down felt endless and freeing at the same time. She didn't cry. She didn't replay the moment. She didn't ask herself why. She already knew. It wasn't about whether he loved her. It was about what he respected. And somewhere along the line, Kauren had started treating her like a constant, like something that would always be there, even if he abused its presence. He hadn't just cheated. He had repurposed her memories to please someone else. And Averin knew that kind of man didn't change when begged. He changed when left. Instead of heading straight home, she booked another room, 2 floors down. Same hotel, different energy. This room had no champagne, no rose petals, no photo frames. It smelled like soap and clean bedding, like honesty, and that was enough. She stood by the window and watched the city below. She didn't need to tell anyone what had happened. Not yet. This wasn't a public wound. It was personal and quiet and still unraveling. The next morning, Kauren tried calling. Once, then again. She didn't answer. She didn't need to hear explanations. She wasn't waiting for remorse. She needed space. By evening, she ordered room service, tied her hair up, and opened her laptop. She didn't even realize what she was doing until she started editing an old pitch deck she once co-wrote with Kauren, back when he still valued her voice in meetings, back when she wasn't just a supportive figure in the shadows. She used to run strategy, shape vision, close deals, but marriage had asked her to dim, and she had said yes, slowly, year by year, until now. The second day was easier. She woke up late, walked barefoot to the window, let the sun hit her face. She didn't feel broken. She felt unhidden. On the third morning, there was a knock on her door. Not loud, not frantic. A knock that said, "Please don't make me beg out here." She opened it. Kauren stood there, coat in one hand, a hotel envelope in the other. His eyes searched her face. He looked like he hadn't slept. "I messed up," he said quietly. Averin leaned on the doorframe. You insulted 10 years of loyalty. That's not a mess up. That's a choice. He nodded slowly. I know, I don't even have a defense. I didn't expect you to be there. That's the problem, she said. You didn't expect me to see what was always mine, to know. He stepped forward slightly. Can I come in? No. There were no tears in her voice, no rage. She had none of that left to give him. Only truth. You took what we built and handed it to someone else like it was just decoration. You didn't just cheat, Kauran. You dressed her in my history. He swallowed hard. Averin, I'll fix this. Please. She looked at him, then gently shook her head. I don't want it fixed. I want it understood. And I don't think you're ready for that part. That evening, she packed her things and left the hotel. Not because she was defeated, but because she had no reason to stay in a place where her memories had been corrupted. She booked her flight home. This time, she didn't sit by the window. She didn't want to look out. She wanted to look forward. When she walked into their home, the air felt different. Not heavy, just unfamiliar. She placed her bag down in the hallway and stood still. Then she walked into their bedroom and opened the closet. She touched nothing for a moment. Then, quietly, carefully, she began taking his clothes out, piece by piece, folding them, placing them in neat piles, not out of anger, not out of spite, out of clarity. She moved into the guest room that night, closed the door behind her, opened her laptop, and applied for 3 consulting opportunities under her maiden name. Not Mrs. Vance. Just Averin Kael. Across the hall, Kauran returned 2 days later. The bedroom door was locked. He knocked. No response. She had already reclaimed the one thing he never thought she would, her own story. Have you ever left the room, not because you were weak, but because you finally saw your worth? Drop a comment below. She left in clarity, not pain. If this story resonates with you, like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that speak to the quiet power in all of us. Averin didn't make noise. That was the part that disarmed everyone the most. There were no social media posts, no calls to friends, no packed suitcases in the hallway. Only adjustments. Subtle ones. Kauran came home to a quiet house. The master bedroom was untouched, but also unopened. The door was locked. The lights were off. He called out once, lightly. Averin? No response. He wandered through the living room. Her scarf was gone from the entry table. The armchair she always used had no blanket draped across the back. Instead, he saw faint signs of her presence elsewhere. Mugs in the guest room, a pair of flats near the study, folders on the dining table. She hadn't left. She'd shifted, and she'd taken her center with her. He knocked on the guest room door. Can we talk? There was silence, then soft footsteps. She opened it halfway. Her face wasn't angry. It was composed, brighter even. I'd rather not talk tonight, she said calmly. Just 5 minutes. She exhaled, but didn't fight. She opened the door fully, stepped back. He entered, glancing around like he didn't recognize his own home anymore. The bed was neatly made. Her laptop was open on the desk. A planner lay beside it, dates highlighted, notes scribbled with precision. She was rebuilding, and he wasn't part of it. I don't expect you to forgive me, he started, but I need you to know it didn't mean anything. She raised a brow. That's worse. What? If it didn't mean anything, then you threw away everything for nothing. He rubbed his hand over his face. I wasn't thinking clearly. I've been stressed, trying to land this funding round. I made a mistake. She stood still, arms folded loosely. You don't get to call it a mistake. You booked an anniversary suite for another woman. You planned it, chose the photos, chose my photos. That wasn't impulse, that was intentional. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Because she was right. She walked to the desk, picked up a white envelope, and handed it to him. He opened it slowly. Inside were 2 things. 1, a photo of them from their wedding, black and white, smiling, hands tangled under a string of garden lights. 2, a signed consulting agreement with a competing tech firm he'd once mocked for being too small. He blinked. "You're working with them?" She nodded. "They respect my mind. Something you stopped doing a long time ago." "I didn't stop," he muttered. "You did," she said. "The moment I stopped being your priority, I became your prop." His eyes dropped to the floor. She tilted her head, studying him. "You built your brand on the illusion of a perfect marriage. You sold it to investors like it was part of your valuation." His jaw clenched. "And I let you," she added, not with bitterness, but with precision. "But I'm done with that part." He looked up again. "I don't want to lose you. You already did." He flinched. "I want to make it right," he added. She gave a sad smile. "You're not trying to fix us, Karen. You're trying to fix your image of you with me." She stepped back and opened the door. "This conversation is over." He didn't move. She raised an eyebrow. "You can leave with what's in your hand, or stay and lose what little respect I have left." He stepped out. She closed the door and locked it. That night, she slept like she hadn't in years. Deep, peaceful. No wondering if he'd come home on time. No waiting up for late texts. No listening for excuses through a fog of hope. She was free, and the air smelled different. By morning, Averin was already on her third call. The project she'd signed onto was bold, a rebrand for a rising AI company targeting healthcare. They needed strategic marketing, visual overhaul, and internal culture coaching. All things she once did behind the scenes for Karen's company. Unpaid, uncredited. Now, she had her name on the contract. Averin Kyle. Full title, no attachments. Midweek, she sat at a corner cafe downtown. Laptop open, documents spread out, hair in a low bun. A young woman at a nearby table kept glancing at her. Finally, she stood up and walked over. "Excuse me. Are you the one handling the Everhart rebrand?" Averin blinked, surprised. "I am." The girl smiled. "I've been following the project updates online. I thought I recognized your name. I just wanted to say, your proposal notes were incredible." Averin's lips parted slightly. She hadn't heard that in a long time. "Thank you," she said quietly. The woman left, and Averin sat still for a moment, looking at her screen. Her name on the proposal, her notes on the table, her direction on the front end of something new. She had stepped out of someone else's spotlight and found the sun was warmer without him. That night, Karen tried to enter the master bedroom, still locked. He leaned against the door, head tilted back, eyes closed. He hadn't expected her to go this quiet. He was ready for anger, for tears, even for drama. But this was harder, because she hadn't made noise. She had simply stopped orbiting him, and that silence made him feel smaller than any fight ever could. The next day, Karen booked a table for two at a private rooftop restaurant in the city, a place Averin loved, or used to love. He didn't tell her why, just texted, 8 p.m. Cornerstone roof. Just dinner. Please come. Averin stared at the message for a long moment, not because she was conflicted, but because it didn't feel urgent. It felt scripted, calculated, like he needed to feel like he was doing something. But she didn't need him to do anything. She needed him to finally see her. She replied simply, "Not tonight." No emoji, no signature. That night, while Karen sat alone with a bottle of wine, Averin finished building out her new portfolio site. She chose her color palette, wrote her bio, uploaded screenshots of her past design frameworks and branding work. For the first time in a decade, her name was at the top of something. Not in the byline, not buried under his press, but centered. She didn't do it to get back at him. She did it because somewhere along the way, she forgot she had a name outside of Mrs. Vance. And now, she was reclaiming it. Later that week, her phone rang again. His name lit up the screen. She let it ring out. 30 minutes later, a knock on the front door. She knew it was him. Still, she opened it. Same coat, same weak eyes. No plan, just panic wrapped in apology. "You're not picking up anymore," he said, not accusatory, but confused. "I have nothing left to say," she replied. "Don't I deserve to say mine? You had the suite for that." He stepped inside uninvited, which she let slide only because she didn't want to make a bigger scene. "I know you're moving on," he said. She raised a brow. "With what?" she asked. "My life." He paused. "With work, yourself. Whatever this new version of you is." She folded her arms. "It's not new. You just stopped paying attention." He sat down on the edge of the couch like he used to after long flights. But this time, he didn't own the space. "You know what's strange?" she said quietly, standing across from him. "You never asked what it felt like for me. That night, sitting in that room, looking at a life you created, with my memories, for someone else." He looked down. "I don't know what to say to that. That's the most honest thing you've said so far." He sighed. "I didn't plan to hurt you. That's the problem. You didn't plan for me at all." Averin walked to the hallway and opened the same white envelope she had handed him days earlier. This time, she added a third paper inside. A signed home office lease agreement downtown, her own space, independent from him, from their name, from the house. "I'll be working from there starting next week," she said. "Everything I build from here on out has my name on it." He held the paper in his hands like it was proof of a slow death. "You're not even giving me a chance." She looked at him calmly. "I gave you 10 years. As he left the house that night, she didn't watch him go. She didn't wait by the window, didn't replay the conversation. She finished cleaning the kitchen, then curled up with a new draft of her brand strategy for the Everhart project. When she closed her laptop, the clock read 1:13 a.m., and for the first time in years, she fell asleep knowing she hadn't been erased that day. The following weekend, she took herself out. No friends, no appointments, just her. She wore soft linen pants, a muted gold blouse, and low heels. She walked into a local bookstore and picked up a novel she'd been meaning to read, the kind of story she used to devour before life became appointments and networking dinners. On her way out, she stopped by the small cafe attached to the shop. And there he was again. Same man, third time in 2 weeks. Table by the window, black coffee, a paperback in his hand. He looked up, smiled lightly. She gave a nod this time. He didn't approach, didn't interrupt. But he did glance again, just once, when she sat at a table nearby. This time, she smiled back. A few moments passed. She opened her book. He kept reading his, but a sense of calm filled the space between them. And somehow, it didn't feel empty. It felt possible. When she returned home that night, her phone was quiet. No missed calls, no texts, just a string of emails from new clients. She poured herself a glass of water and stood by the window. Across the street, she saw a couple walking, hand in hand, quiet, slow. She didn't envy them. She respected them, because their silence looked shared, not strained. That's what she wanted now. Not performance, not apology, presence. The following Monday, Averin unlocked the door to her new office for the first time. It wasn't large, just a brick-exposed workspace tucked into a 2-story building downtown with a street-facing window and enough space for a desk, a couch, and her ideas. But it was hers. No shared boardroom, no waiting for approval, no quiet erasure at the end of someone else's PowerPoint deck. She stepped in and stood for a moment, listening to the stillness. It didn't echo. It grounded her. Her fingers slid along the edge of the clean desk as she imagined what this space would hold. Visions, strategy maps, client calls, maybe even a small team one day. Not built from resentment, not built from revenge, just something she owned. And if anyone asked, she'd tell them the truth. She started over on a Monday, with her back straight and her name on the lease. By midweek, 3 client projects were moving. Her phone buzzed consistently, not with empty apologies or cryptic updates, but with questions that respected her mind. She met with creative directors, sat in on beta demos, offered insight no one talked over. People listened, and for the first time in years, she didn't have to fight to be heard. At home, Karen tried to play it normal. He still left for work in tailored suits, still came home at 6:45, still placed his keys in the same ceramic bowl by the door. But there was a difference now. She no longer made eye contact in the hallway. She didn't ask how his day was. She didn't leave coffee for him in the mornings. She was civil, respectful, but distant. Their home had stopped being theirs. It was two lives running parallel under one roof. One evening, he brought home takeout, her favorite, from the Vietnamese place in Midtown. She found the bag on the counter with a note. Didn't know if you'd eaten. Thought of you. She placed the container in the fridge, untouched. There was a time when that would have softened her, when she would have texted back a thanks, maybe even warmed it up for both of them. But that kind of softness required trust, and trust didn't live there anymore. Later that night, Calvin hovered outside the guest room door again, knocked softly. "Can we talk?" She opened it halfway. He stood with both hands in his pockets. His suit jacket was off, his shirt slightly wrinkled, his face drawn, like he hadn't been sleeping. She waited. "I feel like I'm losing you for good. You are." His throat bobbed as he swallowed. I don't know how to get it back." She stepped into the hallway. "You don't." His mouth parted, confused. "You can't get back something that only ever existed in your head," she continued. "I was there. You were performing." He stared at her like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Because he didn't. He'd spent so long with the version of Averin that adapted, adjusted, and smiled through disappointment that he never noticed the day she stopped bending. This version was clear-eyed, straight-backed, unapologetically present, and completely out of his reach. He nodded slowly. "I understand." "I don't need understanding," she said. "I need distance." When she closed the door, he didn't knock again, and for once, she didn't hope he would. The next morning, she left earlier than usual. The cafe near her office had the best lavender chai, and she planned to finish her storyboard sketches there before her 10 a.m. call. She slipped into a corner booth, set up her things, and opened her laptop. 10 minutes in, she felt a pair of eyes on her. She looked up. Rennick, again. This time, across from her, sitting alone, hands wrapped around a warm mug. He gave a small nod. She smiled, unbothered by the familiarity now. He raised his mug slightly in greeting, then looked down at his tablet. Still no pressure, still no conversation, just quiet recognition. 15 minutes later, as she packed up to leave, he stood too. Not close, not following, just walking out in the same moment. At the door, he held it open. "Morning," he said finally. His voice was warm, gentle. She paused. "Good morning." He let the silence hang there, then added, "I keep seeing you here. Thought it might be a coincidence. But maybe it's not." Averin tilted her head. "Maybe it's the chai." He smiled at that. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment, city sounds moving around them. "I'm Rennick," he offered. "Averin." He nodded, like the name tasted right in his mouth. "Well, Averin, if I see you again, I'll say more than 2 words. Make it 3, she replied. Dry. He laughed, genuinely, and walked away. She stood there a moment longer before heading off. She didn't feel butterflies or tension. She felt steadiness, and for now, that was more valuable than sparks. The following Friday, Averin returned to the cafe with no laptop, no planner, no deadline, just a book and time. She ordered a warm cinnamon latte, picked the same table in the corner, and let herself sit in silence. Something she hadn't done without guilt in years. 15 minutes later, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You know, at this point, I might owe you rent." She looked up. Rennick. Same relaxed posture, same soft confidence. She smirked. "Or you're following me." He held up his coffee like a peace offering. "I can swear under oath. I liked this place first. Then why haven't I seen you here until now?" "I just moved back." She leaned back. "Back? He nodded. Grew up here, left for work. Then my father got sick, so I returned to take care of him. There was no pity in his voice, just a calm explanation, the kind people only give when they're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. She gestured to the empty chair across from her. You want to sit? He blinked, a little surprised, but not hesitant. I'd like that. He sat, careful not to crowd the space, close enough to be present, far enough to be respectful. What do you do? She asked, out of genuine interest. Architect, he said. Mostly residential now. I used to design commercial towers, but something about homes feels more honest. That caught her attention. Honest? He nodded. With homes, you're designing for how people live, not how they want to look. Averin let out a small laugh. I think that might be the clearest thing I've heard all week. They spoke for almost 30 minutes. Nothing too deep. No backstories. Just clean, present conversation. When he stood to leave, he hesitated. I'll be back here Monday, he said. Same time. Noted. He walked away without turning around. And for the first time, in a long time, she didn't feel watched or weighed. She felt visible. The rest of the weekend passed in chapters. Averin spent Saturday at a home studio designing a pitch deck for one of her clients. Sunday, she decluttered the shared hallway, boxed up some of Calren's old marketing trophies and put them in the attic. She didn't toss them, didn't break them. She just removed them from her line of sight. She was clearing space, literally and figuratively. Sunday night, Calren came home later than usual. The master bedroom door remained closed. He paused outside the guest room and knocked gently. She didn't answer, not because she was avoiding him, because she was asleep early. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. Averin walked into the cafe at 9:15. Rennick was already there. She noticed him before he noticed her. He was sketching something on a pad. Lines, shadows, ideas. He looked peaceful. She stepped up to the counter and ordered. As she walked past, he looked up. Good morning, he said with a small grin. She returned it. That makes 3 words. He chuckled, closing the sketchpad. I'm a man of progress. She sat down. No hesitation this time. You work nearby? She asked. He nodded. Studio on Greenridge. 5 minutes from here. And your father? He paused, then spoke gently. Better. Some days harder, but I'm here for it. There was something in the way he said it. Not tired, not seeking sympathy, just honest. She appreciated that. They talked for nearly an hour. This time, a little more detail. Small revelations. Mutual appreciation. At one point, she mentioned the suite, not the betrayal, not Calren's name, just that she'd walked into a room meant for her and realized she didn't belong in the story he was telling anymore. Rennick didn't ask for more. He just nodded. I think some rooms are better walked out of. She smiled at that. I agree. As they stood to leave, he touched her elbow gently, not flirtatious, not suggestive, just enough to say, you're not invisible. She didn't pull away, and she didn't look back when she walked out, because peace doesn't need constant checking. That evening, back home, Calren tried one last time. He waited in the kitchen as she walked in from a grocery run. I know I don't have a place to ask, he said softly, but are you seeing someone? She looked at him, held the stare, then replied, I'm seeing myself. He blinked. That's more than enough, she added, and walked past him, groceries in hand, a quiet kind of power in her step. There was a quiet shift in Averin's rhythm after that Monday. Not dramatic, not rushed, but definite. She no longer moved like she was waiting for someone to notice her presence. She moved like her presence was the reason the room held structure at all. At the office, her name was now on the door, small but etched in silver. Clients started requesting her by name. Collaborators began asking for her lead. Former colleagues reached out just to check in. But she knew what that meant. They were watching and wondering how she'd rebuilt so fast. But it wasn't fast, it was intentional. Because she hadn't just survived something, She'd walked herself out of the life she was told to be grateful for. Wednesday morning, she arrived early, earlier than usual. She wanted time alone before the calls started. She hung her coat on the rack, opened the blinds, and set her phone face down on her desk. The office smelled faintly of eucalyptus from a diffuser she'd brought in. The plants by the window were thriving. Even the coffee machine seemed more generous lately. She looked around and felt something rare. Safety, not comfort, not control, just safety. The kind that doesn't need explaining. At 9:45, her phone buzzed. Not a client. Rennick. I'm by your building. Passing through. No pressure. She smiled faintly, typed back. Come up. She hadn't even thought about it. 5 minutes later, a soft knock. When she opened the door, he stood there in a navy pullover, jeans, and paint on his knuckles. Site visit, he said with a grin, holding up his hands. She stepped aside. Don't touch anything expensive. He laughed. He didn't look like he was trying to impress her. That was the charm. He glanced around. This is your space? All mine. He walked slowly, taking it in. You know what I like? He said finally. There's no filler, no fake stuff. Everything here looks like it belongs. She watched him as he said it, because that's exactly how she'd built the space. Not for decoration, for alignment. He pointed to a framed note near her desk. It was a print of one of her own quotes, something she had scribbled during the first pitch she gave after leaving Karen. If you need to beg to be seen, you're already invisible to the wrong people. He read it, then turned back to her. You really wrote that? I really lived that. She didn't mean to say it that directly, but it landed softly. He didn't press for more. He simply nodded. I like that you're not trying to prove anything in here, he said. Feels like this space is doing it for you. Averin stepped around the desk, leaned back against the edge, and crossed her arms loosely. Why are you really here? Rennick looked at her. No dodge, no smirk. I was hoping I wasn't wrong about how I felt when I saw you. Her brows lifted. He added, there's something different about you. You don't flinch when things get awkward. You let silence stand. And when you look at people, you're not performing for them. She tilted her head. Is that rare? For me, it is. They stood like that, across the room, neither one pushing. It wasn't a confession. It was a recognition. And she didn't step closer. She didn't fill the silence. She let the moment be whole without needing to stretch it. Finally, he said, I should head back, but if it's not too strange, I'd like to take you somewhere. This weekend. Where? He smiled. Not as sweet. She huffed a laugh. That's a low bar. He shrugged. It's honest. Averin watched him walk out, and for the first time since the suite, she didn't feel like she needed to look behind her to see what she'd left. She already knew. That night, she opened a new journal. She hadn't written in months, but something about that moment in the office called her back to the page. She wrote 3 lines. I do not want performance. I do not need punishment. I want quiet, steady peace, and someone who stays still with me in it. She closed the book, and for once, her peace didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like presence. Saturday came with sun and soft wind, the kind of weather that felt like a quiet nod from the world. Not dramatic, just kind. Averin stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her light trench coat. She wasn't dressing to impress, just to feel aligned. Loose black pants, a soft cream blouse, a single gold ring. No heels, just balance. Her phone buzzed. Rennick. No rush. I'm downstairs. You'll know me. I'm the guy not in a suit. She smirked. She picked up her bag and stepped outside. Rennick was leaning against a navy grey car that looked 10 years old but taken care of. Windows down. Music low. His shirt sleeves rolled. Hair slightly wind-tossed. He looked up and smiled. Right on time. I didn't want to keep the architect waiting. Smart move. We're touchy about timelines. He opened the passenger door for her. Not showy, just natural. As she sat, she noticed something unexpected. She wasn't nervous, and that surprised her. They drove north, out of the city, into a quieter stretch lined with trees and small signs for antique shops and family-run diners. After about 30 minutes, he turned down a narrow lane that curved into a gravel path. Ahead sat a quiet structure, part wooden studio, part open-air courtyard. It wasn't a home, not yet, but it had the bones of one. Averin stepped out slowly. "You brought me to a construction site." Rennick laughed. "Almost. It's a redesign project I'm consulting on." He gestured toward the unfinished framework of what would become a family space. "This used to be a mess," he said. "Rotten floorboards, broken foundation. They were going to tear it down. And you stopped them?" He nodded. "It didn't need to be destroyed, just needed to be seen differently." He looked at her then, not casually, like he meant something more than what he said. They walked the space slowly. Averin ran her fingers along unfinished beams. "You have to imagine it as something whole before it is," she said softly. Rennick glanced at her. "That's exactly how I feel about people." They sat on the edge of the framing, looking out over a stretch of wild grass and quiet hills. No buildings, no noise, just stillness. "I like this," she said. "What part?" "All of it. The not trying. The open air. The fact that we don't need to perform to fill the space." He nodded, eyes on the field. "We get sold the idea that tension means interest, that chemistry has to be chaos." She turned toward him. "And I think safety's the real spark. You just notice it slower." They sat like that for a long time. No hands reached. No flirtation pushed, but it felt warm. Averin leaned back on her palms, the breeze pulling at her coat. Rennick finally spoke. "I don't need to know what happened. Not unless you want to say it." She looked at him, steady. "Someone I loved, took what I gave and built someone else's moment with it." He nodded. "I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I didn't try to outshine her. You just left the room." "Exactly." He paused, then said gently, "Good." She looked at him. "Because a woman like you doesn't beg for space. She becomes the space." It was a simple statement. But something inside her relaxed. Not because he complimented her, but because he understood her. Without needing her to perform grief to be believed. They left an hour later. He didn't ask to drive her anywhere else, didn't push for dinner, or linger at the door. He parked by her place and waited until she unbuckled her seatbelt. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Thanks for inviting me." He offered her a small smile. "I meant what I said, by the way. Some people are the space." She stepped out and looked at him through the open door. "I don't need the suite anymore." "I didn't think you did." She closed the door, walked inside. No pause, no regret, just presence. That night, she curled up with her journal again. This time, the page wasn't about pain. It was about alignment. "I am no longer explaining my worth in spaces where I feel unseen. I am not waiting for a call to tell me I matter. I am not wondering if he notices my absence. I am full, present, and heard." She closed the book, and the quiet felt like healing. Averin stood in front of her bathroom mirror on a Wednesday morning, brushing a light layer of powder across her cheekbone. No event, no meeting, but she did it anyway. For herself. A simple detail, 5 minutes of care. She adjusted the collar of her blouse, then paused. Her reflection looked steady. Not just well-rested, not just clean. Steady. She touched her ring finger. Empty now. No tan line. No ghost imprint. Just skin that had learned not to carry someone else's symbolism anymore. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Karen was still out of town, supposedly for a speaking engagement in Austin. He hadn't said much before leaving, not that she asked. She no longer tracked his movements. She didn't wait for doors to open, didn't jump at the sound of keys turning. If he was a presence in the house, he was background noise, not rhythm, not foundation. By 10 a.m., Averin was deep into a brand campaign draft. Her team had grown, 2 part-time assistants, one junior creative. She still ran every idea through her own filter though. Every word that left her desk had to carry weight, because now everything had her name on it. There were no more safety nets. No spouse's reputation to fall back on. No corporate sponsor in the background calling in favors. This success lived and died with her work. And for the first time in a long time, she liked that. Midday, her assistant popped in. "You've got someone in the lobby. Says he's not here for business, but looks serious." Averin stood, smoothing down the sleeves of her blazer. "Name?" He didn't give one. But he said, "You'd know." She didn't need more than that. Rennick. She walked downstairs and found him exactly where she expected, standing with hands in pockets, expressions soft, posture calm. "Didn't know you were swinging by," she said, smiling. He shrugged, was nearby. "Thought I'd see if you had 10 minutes. Or 15. She nodded toward the sidewalk. "Walk with me." They stepped out into the crisp air. She noticed how he walked beside her, not ahead, not behind. Matched her pace without comment. Made space without making it awkward. They strolled half a block before either of them spoke. "I like seeing you here," he said finally. "In your element." She glanced over. "Why?" "Because you look like you don't owe anyone anything in that building." She laughed lightly. "That's accurate." He looked over at her. "That's rare." They reached a corner and stopped near a florist's shop. Bouquets lined the window, catching the light. "I wanted to ask you something," Rennick said. Quiet now. Averin leaned against the glass. "Go ahead. Would you come with me this weekend? It's not a date. I mean, it could be. But that's not the point." She raised a brow. "What's the point then?" He looked slightly sheepish. "My father asked me to bring someone. He's meeting with some old friends, small thing. But he's been asking a lot about who I spend time with. I don't want to give him a rehearsed answer." She paused. "You want me to come as the truth?" He nodded. "Exactly." She didn't answer right away. Not because she was unsure, but because she was absorbing it. The tone of it, the intention behind it. There was no push, no proving, just a soft ask. And she found herself saying, yes. That Saturday, Averin wore navy. Not black, not beige, navy. Strong, but soft. Rennick picked her up early. Again in that navy grey car. Again no pressure. Just a calm energy that said, "I want you there." Not for optics, for presence. They drove quietly, occasional glances exchanged. No need to overfill the space. When they arrived at the house, a modest, well-kept one-story with a big front porch, Rennick turned off the ignition and looked at her. "Just be yourself. That's what he'll respect most." She smiled. "Good, because I retired from pretending." Inside, the house smelled of books and lemon balm. His father was seated in a soft chair by the window, oxygen tube resting gently against his cheek, but his eyes were sharp. "Dad," Rennick said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "This is Averin." The old man looked her over, not in a judging way, more like he was assessing how solid her presence was. He nodded. "I like your shoes." "Not too loud." She laughed. "They're hard-working shoes." He smirked. "Good, because I've met enough people who come in here loud and leave silent." She sat beside him, not too close, not too far. Rennick disappeared into the kitchen for tea, and Averin found herself talking about things she hadn't brought up in years, not pain, but presence, where she grew up, her first failed design pitch, the time she tried to bake banana bread and nearly set off the smoke alarm, her father's vintage record collection, her mother's quiet resilience. The old man listened, and at one point said, "You remind me of someone who never needed an audience to be powerful." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. That evening, after Rennick dropped her off, she stood outside her front door a little longer than usual. She wasn't delaying. She was processing, because something had changed in the air around her. Not rushed, not romantic, just respected, and she didn't want to lose the clarity that came with that. Inside, the house was still. She placed her keys in the dish, kicked off her shoes, and headed upstairs. In the hallway, she paused outside the master bedroom, still shut, still untouched. She opened it, not to reclaim it, not to clean it, just to face it. She stood in the doorway, arms at her sides, and looked at the bed. The framed picture still on the nightstand, the sheets untouched. She took a breath, then turned off the light and walked out. In the guest room, she opened her journal, not out of habit, but out of rhythm. Today, I was asked to show up not as proof, not as a prop, not as apology, just as me. And it felt enough. She closed the book. Her heart didn't race, but it beat steady. And for now, that was better. Karen returned Sunday evening. He didn't say a word when he came through the door. His luggage rolled across the hardwood, wheels clicking like a soft reminder of who used to wait up for him and no longer did. He paused in the entryway, keys in hand, listening. No scent of food, no folded laundry, no faint music from Averin's side of the house, only the sound of his own breath and the distant hum of the dishwasher, set on a timer most likely. Not done for him. He walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and saw it lined with groceries he didn't buy. He reached for the milk. It wasn't the brand he liked, and even that told him something. Upstairs, Averin was on a video call with a startup in Portland. Her voice was clear, firm. No, if they want to rebrand, they need to understand we're not just changing the logo. We're shifting how people feel when they hear their name. She wasn't performing. She wasn't talking over anyone. She was leading. After the call, she stretched, poured herself a glass of water, and stepped out into the hallway. Karen stood by the stair rail, holding his phone but not using it. She stopped. So did he. "Hey," he said. She nodded. "I was going to text you to say I was back. You didn't need to." He stepped closer. "You've been busy." She tilted her head. "I've been working. Looks like it's going well." "It is." He glanced toward the guest room. "Still sleeping there?" She raised a brow. Was that a real question? He sighed. "Can I take you out this week?" "For what?" "Dinner. Somewhere quiet. Just talk." Averin took a long pause. Then she replied, "You don't get to ask for a night until you've spent weeks reflecting on the years." He opened his mouth, closed it again. She didn't wait. She walked past him, her glass in hand, her pace unbothered. The next day, Karen sat alone at his company's downtown office, scrolling through LinkedIn. He saw the post without warning. Averin, featured in an interview for founders who reclaimed their voice. Photo crisp. Headline strong. Leaving the shadows wasn't an accident. It was an overdue return. Her words. Her face, not connected to him. He stared at the screen, and for the first time realized how loud her absence had become. He hadn't lost a wife. He'd lost the architect of every good decision he had ever made. Averin didn't know about the article going live. Her team handled the press. Her assistant managed the posts. She simply showed up to her 11 a.m. call and kept the flow moving. Afterward, she sat in her office window, sipping tea. Her phone buzzed. "Rennick, have time for a walk? Come by in 10. They walked the same quiet loop near her office, city noise humming behind them but never cutting through. He was unusually quiet. She glanced over. "You good?" He nodded. "Yeah. Just watching you." She smirked. "That doesn't sound passive at all." He smiled. "I mean it the right way." They reached the bench under the elm tree, the one they'd stopped at once before. He gestured. "Sit with me?" They both sat, wind brushing past. Rennick looked down at his hands, then said, "I've been thinking about you." She stayed quiet. "About what it feels like to know someone who doesn't need me." She turned to him, brows drawn. "And I don't mean that in a bad way," he added quickly. "I mean, it's rare. Most people want someone to fix something, prove something. You don't do that. You just exist like you already won." Averin's voice softened. "I didn't win, Rennick. I walked away before I lost more. He nodded slowly. And now, she continued, I don't need someone to rescue me. I need someone who doesn't distract me from myself. He looked at her carefully. I think I could be that. Think? I know. They didn't hold hands, didn't lean in, but something exchanged between them. Not love, not yet, but understanding. That evening, Averin returned home and passed by the dining room table. Karen sat there, dinner uneaten. He looked up, tired, unsure. I saw the article, he said. She paused at the doorway. He stood. You didn't even tell me. Was I supposed to? No, I didn't expect it. That's your pattern, Karen. You didn't expect me to leave, didn't expect me to grow, didn't expect me to thrive. He said nothing. You kept thinking I was a constant, but I was a compass, and you ignored the direction until you lost the map. He swallowed hard. Do you hate me? No. He looked up, startled. I don't hate you, she said, but I also don't recognize the version of me that stayed with you that long. That cut deeper than shouting ever could. She walked away. No storm, no chaos, just closure. Upstairs, she lit a candle, sat with her tea, opened her journal. I no longer answer to absence. I don't seek noise. I am not returning to anything that left me standing alone in a room built from my own memories. She placed the pen down. The flame flickered. And the quiet stayed. The first time Averin stepped into Rennick's studio, it felt nothing like Karen's world. No floor-to-ceiling glass panels, no cold steel, no design aesthetic curated to intimidate. Just sketches pinned to corkboards, open windows, tools scattered where they'd been used, not staged for display. It was a space made for building, not posing, and that difference settled her. She stood in the center of the main room, her eyes drifting to the layout plans and rough models spread across the table. This is where it happens? She asked. Rennick closed his laptop and leaned on the table with both hands. This is where the mess leads to something honest. She walked around slowly, pausing in front of a partial rendering of a cabin. Small, tucked into a wooded lot with a wraparound porch and soft lines. Nothing flashy. What's this one? Mine, he said. I've been drawing it for 3 years. Is it real? Not yet. But one day, it will be. Built it in pieces. Whenever I'm not trying to meet someone else's deadline. She looked up. It feels lived in. That's the goal. He watched her as she took it in. Not with awe, not with praise, but with presence. Averin didn't flatter. She observed. And when something mattered to her, you knew. She turned to face him. You want to build homes for people, but you've already been doing that, haven't you? He raised a brow. You've been offering space where people can be themselves, she said. And that's rarer than a blueprint. He smiled, slowly. Are you always this disarming? Only with people who don't try to control the outcome. Later that afternoon, they sat on the rooftop terrace just above his studio. 2 mugs of coffee. 1 shared blanket. No music. They looked out over the neighborhood skyline. Quiet rooftops, balconies with laundry, a few potted plants on windowsills. She turned to him, steady. Are you afraid of me? She asked, without a hint of teasing. He took a second to think. No, not even a little. I'm afraid of doing something that would make you disappear, he said. But I'm not afraid of you. She held his gaze. Good. That night, Karen was home. He'd stopped asking questions, stopped trying to make offers. He knew now, her silence wasn't a tactic. It was a wall, not a barrier to hurt him, but to protect what she'd finally reclaimed. He passed her in the hallway and paused. Can I ask one thing? She didn't respond, just gave him permission with her eyes. Is there someone else? Averin didn't flinch. There's someone present? He nodded slowly. Does he know what happened? He doesn't need details to treat me with care. Karen stood quietly, absorbing the weight of her answer. You're really gone, aren't you? I left the moment I realized my forgiveness would only delay your next offense. She didn't say it with venom. She said it with freedom. And he didn't chase her this time. He walked away. At work, her client portfolio doubled. People weren't just hiring her for her eye, they were hiring her for her mind. One evening, a young entrepreneur said, "You see things others step over." She replied, "That's what happens when you've spent years being overlooked. You stop ignoring what matters." That weekend, Rennick brought her to a quiet lake spot on the edge of the county. Just trees, water, and one empty bench facing the shore. She stepped out of the car and took it in, her breath catching, not from overwhelm, but from the peace. "I used to come here with my mom," he said softly, standing beside her. When things got loud at home, she'd just sit, eyes on the water, and say nothing for an hour straight. That silence kept her sane. They sat. Minutes passed. No one reached for a phone. No one filled the air. Just breeze and water. Finally, Rennick said, "You look like a woman who rebuilt her life in pieces." "I am." "Did it hurt?" "Every piece. But you still did it." "I had no choice," she said. "But now, I get to choose who I let sit with me in the quiet." He looked at her. "Am I sitting right?" She nodded. "You haven't said a single wrong thing." He smiled. "That's not my goal. What is? To never make you feel like you have to leave a room just to be seen." She blinked. Not because the words shocked her, but because she realized in that moment she didn't need to defend her softness anymore. He'd already made space for it. Later that night, she stood in front of her full-length mirror again. Same face, same body, but everything about her felt different now. Not because of him, but because of her own return. And in the mirror, she saw someone who no longer lived in rooms meant to hide her. The next morning, Averin stood barefoot on the back patio of her home, sipping tea. The stone beneath her feet was cool. The light was low. Birds were just beginning their usual song across the trees. For once, the house felt like it belonged to her again. Not because she reclaimed it, but because she no longer needed permission to take up space inside it. She glanced behind her. The master bedroom door was closed, untouched for months now. It didn't sting, it didn't ache. It simply existed, like a part of her history that had been moved to storage. And now, she was no longer living in it. At work, the final presentation for the Everhart client was flawless. The room, half in person, half virtual, was full of cautious executives expecting the usual buzzwords. But Averin didn't give them slogans. She gave them truth. "We're not selling a product, we're reintroducing trust." That starts with clarity, not charisma. When the call ended, two things happened immediately. One, Everhart extended the contract another 6 months. Two, her name began trending on 3 professional networks. But Averin didn't check the buzz. She simply closed her laptop, leaned back, and looked out the window. She knew what it meant. She had shifted the power without raising her voice. That evening, Rennick showed up outside her office with a box of tacos and 2 bottles of hibiscus soda. "No plans, no pressure," he said, holding it up like an offering. "Thought you might want to eat somewhere. No one expects anything from you." They walked to the rooftop, same spot as last week, and ate cross-legged on a blanket. Halfway through the meal, he said, "I like that you don't play games. I hate games. I've dated women who needed to win every room." She chewed slowly. "I've been the woman they used to get into the room. Big difference." He looked at her. "You feel safe to be around." She smiled. "You feel still." That made him blink. "Still?" In a good way. "You're not frantic. You don't drain the air out of the space." Rennick chuckled. "That's the best compliment I've gotten in a decade." They sat quietly again, looking over the city as it lit up, one window at a time. He turned to her. "Do you miss him?" She didn't flinch. "No, not even the idea of him. I miss who I was before I believed I had to earn being kept." He nodded slowly. "That part. I spent so long convincing myself I was lucky to be chosen," she said. "Now I know better. You are the choice." She met his eyes. "You really believe that?" He reached for her hand, not fast, not demanding. Just placed his palm face up. She stared at it for a moment, then slowly, placed hers in his, not as permission, but as agreement. 2 days later, a package arrived at her office, no return name. But the handwriting was familiar. She opened it carefully. Inside, a bound copy of a speech Karen had once given, the one she wrote for him 5 years ago, line by line, metaphor by metaphor. He'd never credited her. Tucked inside the pages, a single note. I should have acknowledged you when I had the mic. I hope now you never need one to be heard. She stared at it for a moment, then folded it, placed it inside her drawer. She didn't need to respond. That version of her had already been laid to rest. Saturday morning, Rennick met her outside a quiet cabin on the outskirts of town. "This was part of the project," he said, unlocking the door. "No one's staying here yet. Thought you might want a break." Averin stepped inside. No champagne, no candles, no framed wedding photos, just clean wood floors, warm lighting, fresh sheets. She turned to him. "You remembered. No sweets, no pretending, just stillness." She smiled. "You brought it full circle." "No, you did," he said. "I just gave it a roof." That night, she sat on the cabin porch wrapped in a blanket, a warm mug in her hands. Rennick sat beside her, close but not crowding. "Do you think it's too soon?" he asked quietly. "For what?" "For this, for us." She looked at him. "Time isn't the measure. Peace is. And do you feel peace?" She nodded. "Yes." He looked down. "Then it's not too soon." She leaned her head on his shoulder. No performance, no flashback, no doubt. She had walked through fire, and somehow, without screaming, she'd emerged whole. Not because someone pulled her out, but because she'd stopped waiting for someone to notice she was burning. Drop a comment below. She didn't raise her voice. She raised her value. If you believe healing can happen without shouting, and power can return quietly, like this story, share it with someone who's been through the fire and came out softer, not smaller. And if these stories speak to your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. There's more truth, more strength, and more heart coming your way. Only on Mr. Charles Stories. Monday morning brought stillness but not silence. Averin stood in front of her office window, a steaming mug of black tea in hand, the city waking slowly beneath her. There was something different in the air. Not an announcement, not a storm, but a signal. She wasn't rising anymore. She had risen. When she turned from the window, her assistant was already in the doorway, wide-eyed. "Someone's in the lobby." Corporate security tried to stop him, but he said he'd wait all day. Averin didn't blink. "Name?" He wouldn't give one. "But he's holding a bouquet. The exact mix you mentioned once. Lilacs and daisies." She didn't react visibly. But inside her chest, a single chord tightened. She walked down slowly. Not because she was uncertain, but because she wanted control of her pace. When she stepped into the lobby, there he was. Calran, wearing a charcoal blazer, not pressed. Face unshaved. Tie gone. But it was the bouquet that hit her first. Lilacs and daisies. The ones from the suite. Only not that sweet. From Brooklyn. From the apartment she once called home before him. A detail he'd ignored for a decade, now remembered too late. He stood as she approached. "I'm not here to make a scene." She nodded once. Then, "We're aligned." He offered the flowers. She didn't reach for them. He set them gently on the table between them. "I heard about the cabin. You're following me now." "No." Your name came up in conversation. "People are watching, Averin. They're seeing. That's different." He exhaled slowly. "I don't have a speech. I wouldn't listen to one." "Then I'll say this," he said. "You were the only real thing I ever built, and I let my ego walk all over that foundation." She didn't speak. "I thought I needed admiration. I thought I was outgrowing you." She raised a brow. "And then I realized you had stopped shrinking to keep me comfortable." She tilted her head. "Keep talking." He swallowed. "I was jealous, not of you, of how you could love without needing to dominate." There was a pause. "I couldn't handle your quiet power," he admitted. "And now I see that's the only kind that lasts." She picked up the flowers, held them for a second, then handed them back. "You're not the villain, Calren, but you're not my future either." He took them slowly. "You used to call me your safe place." She looked him in the eye. "That was before I knew safety isn't where you go when you're tired. It's where you don't have to be afraid." He stood there, holding the bouquet like it weighed more than it did. "I'm proud of you," he said finally. "You don't have to be," she replied. "You just have to let me go." She turned, walked away, never once looking back. "Upstairs," Rennick texted. "Lunch at the lake? I brought your favorite." "On my way." She left her office without rush, without noise, but with something bigger than both: clarity. The lake was still, and so was he, leaning against the hood of his car, sleeves rolled, picnic bag in hand. She approached. He held out a small sandwich container and a bottle of her favorite ginger soda. "Don't say I never pay attention," he smiled. "You always do." They sat on the wooden bench facing the water. No small talk, just presence. Halfway through lunch, Rennick said quietly, "You don't owe me any updates about today, but if you want to talk, I'll listen without needing to fix it." Averin took a breath. Calren showed up. He nodded slowly. "How'd it feel?" Like he finally saw what he broke, but not what it cost. "That's usually how it goes," Rennick said. "People see the wreckage, but not the rebuilding." She watched the water ripple as a breeze picked up. "I realized something," she said. "He used to love me for what I gave. You value me even when I'm quiet." He looked at her. "That's the only way I know how to love." She turned toward him, eyes clear. "Then let's not rush this. We're not on a clock. I just want it to be real." "It already is." He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't hesitate. That night, Averin stood in her kitchen, barefoot, slicing cucumbers for a small bowl of salad. No rush, no second plate to set, just her and a late dinner. The house was still, but it didn't feel lonely. The silence was earned, and that made all the difference. She moved without checking her phone, without waiting for footsteps in the hallway, without wondering if someone was about to ruin her peace again. Every slice of that cucumber meant more than she ever thought it would, because it was the first time in a long time that peace wasn't something she prepared for someone else. It was something she prepared for herself. Across town, Rennick sat at his drafting table, sketching out updates for a project due in 3 weeks. But his focus drifted, not out of distraction, out of gratitude. He thought of her laugh, short and unforced, her way of pausing before answering, as if every word had value before it was given. She hadn't rushed toward him. She hadn't run from him either. And that balance, that calm pull instead of chaos, he hadn't known how much he needed it until he met her. Meanwhile, in the old bedroom across the hall from Averin's guest room, Calren packed a duffel bag. No fight, no begging. He placed folded shirts into the bag, grabbed his watch, and glanced around. The room didn't feel like home. It felt like a set, a place where everything looked right in pictures but collapsed under pressure in real life. He wasn't kicked out. He was simply no longer included. And somewhere between the suite he used for Betrayal and the hallway where Averin stopped, explaining herself, Calren knew he had become the shadow in someone else's story. He zipped the bag, walked out quietly, closed the front door without slamming it. Averin didn't check to see if he was gone. She didn't ask where he was going. She simply walked to her guest room, changed into a cotton robe, and opened her laptop. New contracts, new leads, a message from a podcast asking her to speak about personal power and reinvention. She smiled softly. That's what happens when you stop performing loyalty for someone who doesn't. Earn it. You become the version of yourself they could never handle. 2 days later, she joined Rennick at a small open-air food market near the edge of town. No planning, no pressure. She wore a simple blouse and sandals, no makeup, hair in a twist. He looked at her as she approached. Every time I see you, he said, you look more like yourself. She chuckled. I don't even know what that means anymore. It means you're not dressing to be safe. You're dressing because you're already safe. She stopped in front of a stall selling handmade candles and ran her finger gently over a jar, labeled Cedar plus Warm Rain. That's a rare feeling, she said. What is safety that doesn't cost you your identity? They walked slowly, weaving through rows of tables and scents of bread, basil, and oranges. At a corner stall, an older woman looked at Averin, then at Rennick. You two fit, she said out of nowhere. They paused, amused. Sorry, Averin asked. The woman shrugged. You look like you give each other room to breathe. Rennick smiled, eyes still on Averin. We try. That evening, they drove back to the cabin, not to make it something it wasn't, but to sit in a place where their story didn't need explanation. They built a small fire outside, wrapped a blanket between them, and listened to the stillness. No music, no pressure. Just wood crackling, leaves brushing, and a closeness that didn't demand more than it gave. I have something to ask, Rennick said softly. She looked over, curious. Do you still check the door? Averin frowned. What do you mean? At night. Do you still get up and check if it's locked? She hesitated. Then, I used to, but not anymore. Not since I stopped expecting someone I loved to come home with lies in their pockets. He nodded, understanding heavy in his eyes. I'll never be perfect, he said, but I'll never use your peace as a hiding place for my guilt. She looked at him for a long time, then leaned her head against his shoulder. You say things that land where silence used to live, she whispered. They didn't move from that fire until the stars were fully awake. And when they went inside, they didn't race towards something. They rested in something they were already building. Averin hadn't worn white in a long time. Not since the wedding. Not since the day she stood at the altar, believing commitment meant protection and that wearing white would mean something sacred to the man who stood beside her. But this morning she wore a soft white linen dress. No lace, no jewelry, no message, just light and clean. She wasn't reclaiming the color. She was redefining it. Her calendar was clear for the day. She had planned it that way. She'd scheduled 3 strategy sessions back to back the day before so that today she could leave her phone in the kitchen drawer, untouched. She needed space, not for escape, but to listen to herself without interruption. Mid-morning, her doorbell rang. Not a buzz, not an impatient knock, one soft chime. When she opened the door, Rennick stood there with a slow smile, holding 2 iced coffees and a folded paper bag. I brought you the good croissants, he said. The ones that flake all over your lap but are worth it. She stepped aside. That's a strong opening. He held up the bag like a trophy. Flour on my jeans is proof of effort. They sat on her porch, legs stretched out, backs against the wall. The neighborhood moved quietly around them. A kid's bike clinked by. A dog barked twice and fell silent. Wind danced through the trees without asking for applause. Have you ever had a day like this? She asked suddenly. He turned toward her. Like what? Where nothing is broken, nothing needs fixing, and you don't feel guilty for resting. Rennick took a slow sip. I used to think rest was weakness. Now I think it's the prize. Averin nodded. Took me too long to figure that out. By early afternoon, they moved inside, sat on the rug in her living room, flipping through an old photography book she hadn't touched in years. She paused on a photo of a woman sitting at a train station, alone, with her eyes closed. Look at her, Averin said. You don't know if she's waiting for someone or choosing not to board. Rennick studied it. Maybe she's both. Averin turned the page. That used to be me, sitting still, pretending to be patient, when I was really just scared to leave. Rennick placed his hand over hers on the book. You left. Eventually, he squeezed gently. That's what matters. Later, they cooked together, not as an event, not as a test, just 2 people chopping vegetables side by side. Rennick laughed when he misjudged the pepper flakes, coughing while she waved the air with a kitchen towel. He looked at her through teary eyes. I almost died for flavor. She handed him water. "You'll survive. You've made it through worse." "True. I once wore skinny jeans in July." She smirked. "That's not bravery. That's poor judgment." He pointed at her with a spatula. "You're the only person who scares me a little." She smiled. "That's how you know it's real." Dinner was quiet. Not because there was nothing to say. Because they didn't need to fill every second. After clearing the dishes, they sat outside again, this time with warm mugs of chamomile. "You ever think about who you were 5 years ago?" he asked. "All the time." "And what do you feel?" "Gratitude," she said, "for leaving the rooms that made me question my worth." He nodded slowly. "And sadness too," she added. "Not because I miss those people, but because I let myself stay that long." Rennick turned his body fully toward her now. "If it helps," he said, "you don't carry any of that anymore." "What do I carry then?" He answered without blinking. "Presence, clarity, and quiet power." She didn't respond. She didn't have to, because that was the most accurate thing anyone had said to her in years. That night before bed, she opened her journal. She didn't need to document every detail. She wasn't writing to remember the day. She was writing to remind herself what it felt like. "Today, I was loved without decoration, no performance, no stage, no fear. Just two people sitting in the truth without trying to control it. This is what being known should feel like. This is what I'll protect." She closed the journal, turned off the light, and slept, arms wrapped around nothing but peace. The next morning, Averin didn't wake up to an alarm. She didn't wake up in reaction to anything. No buzzing phone, no pacing. Husband, no mental list of things she hadn't done well enough. She woke up in rhythm. Soft light filtered through the curtains. Her robe was where she left it. Her shoulders felt light. She stepped into the kitchen and started her tea. And for a brief moment, she stood still, hand resting on the counter, just taking it in. She hadn't known what peace would look like. But now, she knew how it sounded. Quiet, honest, uninterrupted. At 9 a.m., she had a client video call. A woman-owned finance startup from Seattle. They were stuck, branding confused, messaging inconsistent, vision unclear. Averin listened first. Then she spoke, not with jargon, but with clarity. "You're selling financial safety, not freedom. Freedom implies chaos. People want a place to land, not a place to leap." The room went silent on the other side of the screen. Then came the words she had started to hear more often now. No one ever explained it that way before. After the call, she packed up her things, left a note for her assistant, and stepped out. She needed air. Not because she was overwhelmed, because her body now knew when it deserved stillness. She walked through a nearby street market, bought herself a string of dried lavender, paused to try a sample of citrus honey from a local vendor. She wasn't rushing, and she didn't owe anyone a report for why. Back home, she found an envelope in her mailbox. No name, no stamp, just her name in neat handwriting. She opened it on the porch. Inside was a folded card and a photograph. The card read, "No speech, just this memory. I know what I lost." The photo was of their wedding day, but not the posed photo from the reception. It was one someone had taken just after the vows. She was laughing. He was looking at her, not performing, not smiling for the camera, just looking. She stared at the photo for a long minute, then turned it over and, without hesitation, slid it into the trash bin beside her, not out of spite, but because her joy was no longer linked to nostalgia. That evening, Rennick picked her up for dinner, a small Italian spot she'd never been to, outside the city, quiet, family-run. They sat on the patio under string lights and ordered plates they couldn't pronounce. She reached for a breadstick and accidentally sent her fork flying off the table. Rennick smiled, picked it up without commentary, and placed it gently beside her napkin. No joke, no mockery, just presence. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm not used to dropping things around people who don't make it a metaphor for my worth." He paused. "Did people really do that to you?" "They didn't mean to," she said. "But when someone already believes you're replaceable, Every small slip becomes evidence. Rennick leaned back. You don't look replaceable. She met his eyes. I used to think being irreplaceable meant being perfect. And now I think it means being real and being safe in my flaws. He nodded quietly. Then, good. Because I plan to know all of them. They drove home in silence, music low, windows cracked. When they pulled into her driveway, he parked but didn't reach for the ignition. She turned to him, waiting. He didn't speak right away. Then finally, he said it. I don't want to rush you, I know, but when you're ready, I want to walk into every room with you, not behind you, not in front of you, with you. She sat with that, the weight of it, the simplicity of it, and then, calmly, I think I'm almost ready. He didn't pressure, didn't demand a date, just smiled. I'll be here. That night, before bed, she took one last look at the mirror in her guest room. She hadn't moved into the master, hadn't needed to. That room wasn't hers anymore. She had found something better than reclaiming the space he left behind. She created one no one could take from her again. In her journal, she wrote, I am no longer available for emotional negotiation. I do not audition for peace. I do not shrink to be allowed in. I am choosing people who walk beside me, not ahead with blindfolds. She turned off the light and slept, with nothing left to explain. Exactly 1 year later, Averin stood in front of a different suite, different hotel, different city, different woman. The bellhop opened the door and stepped aside. She thanked him, tipped in cash, and walked into the space alone. No candles, no framed photos, no illusion of romance wrapped around betrayal. This time, the room smelled like citrus and cedarwood, and this time, she chose the reservation. The suite was soft, intentional. Light poured in from a high balcony window. The furniture was modern but lived in, the kind of place that made space for people, not performances. She set her bag down and looked around. It wasn't a milestone. It was a checkpoint, a marker in the road that said, you made it past everything they thought would break you. An hour later, Rennick arrived. He knocked lightly, waited. When she opened the door, he stood there in a black button-up and relaxed trousers, holding a box, not flowers. She raised a brow. What is it? He handed it to her. Inside, a custom sketchbook, bound in slate-grey leather, embossed with gold ink. On the first page, he had written, for the woman who didn't burn down the past. She redesigned it. She didn't say anything at first, just ran her hand across the cover. Then quietly, you remember everything I don't even say out loud. He smiled. That's my job. They sat in the suite's private lounge, sipping wine, the city's skyline turning amber behind them. So, he said, how does this feel? She tilted her head. Like the version of me I fought for. Finally caught up to the surface. You think she's staying this time? She doesn't need to stay, Averin said. She owns the space now. They didn't toast. They didn't make promises. They simply shared the silence, again, and filled it with presence. Halfway through the evening, Rennick reached for her hand. She let him. No tension, no build-up. Just two people who weren't trying to prove anything to each other. I keep thinking about the suite, she said, finally. The old one? She nodded. There was so much effort for someone who was lying. People always decorate guilt. She looked at him. Is that what you think love looks like? Quiet and undressed. He leaned back. I think love shows up with a bag of groceries and a question like, do you want to eat together or sit in silence? She laughed. That's not poetic. He grinned. It's honest. Poetry comes later, after the dishes. By midnight, the city outside was asleep. But they weren't. They sat on the floor beside the couch, shoulders touching, shoes off. I used to think intimacy was about excitement, she said. Now I think it's about peace. Rennick nodded. Excitement is easy. It's loud, distracting. But peace, she added. Peace demands honesty and stillness, he said, which most people avoid. She turned toward him. I don't want this to feel like a replacement. He met her gaze. It doesn't. I want it to feel like something earned, not given out of loneliness. He brushed his thumb along the side of her hand. Then don't give it. Build it. She took a breath. Are we doing that now? He nodded. One brick at a time. That night, they stayed up talking until their voices softened. No expectations. No rituals. Just slow truth. She told him about her childhood, about her mother's silence, her father, his long shifts, her need to always be the together one in every room. He told her about a woman he once thought he loved, who never once asked him how his day was when it didn't involve her. They weren't exchanging wounds. They were showing each other the architecture beneath their current shape. At one point, he said something that made her go still. You're the first person I've been with who doesn't make me feel like I have to earn forgiveness before I speak. She blinked, because she knew that feeling too well. By the time they lay down, on top of the blankets, fully clothed, there was nothing unresolved. She rested her head on his chest, his arm rested around her shoulder. Sleep came easily, because real safety does that. It doesn't need to be claimed. It just is. Averin didn't wake up startled. She woke up slow, rested, aware of her body in a way that hadn't happened in years. The warmth beside her wasn't performative. It was real. Rennick was already half awake, blinking slowly, hair tousled, still in his shirt from last night. No rushed movements, no awkward tension, just comfort. Morning, he murmured. She let her voice stay soft. You snore. He smiled with his eyes closed. Only around women I trust. They stayed in bed longer than planned, talking about nothing and everything. How he used to hate licorice. How she still couldn't sleep with the bathroom light off. How people rarely notice others unless they need something. Rennick wasn't in a rush to impress her, and she didn't need to prove anything anymore. This wasn't the aftermath of a fight. It was the middle of something whole. Later that afternoon, they walked to a nearby market. No matching outfits, no hand-holding for show, just side by side. Averin carried a small paper bag with coffee and grapes. Rennick bought a pencil set and a croissant. They sat on a bench by the river, watching an older couple argue gently about which train to take. You think we'll end up like them? Rennick asked, tearing a piece of the croissant. I hope not, Averin said. They still care too much about the train. I want to care more about the journey. He nodded, passed her a piece of the croissant. She took it without hesitation. Small exchanges like that mattered now. They weren't sugar-coated, they were sincere. Back in the suite, Averin sat at the writing desk and opened the sketchbook he gave her. On the second page she wrote, The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing I betrayed myself by making excuses for him. She paused, then wrote more. But I forgive myself now. Not for what happened. For staying so long in a room I'd already outgrown. She closed the book and turned to find Rennick watching her. What? She asked. He shrugged. You're quieter when you're strong. That's not always a good thing. It is when the silence isn't bitter. She smiled faintly. You always speak in symmetry. He came over, leaned on the desk beside her. Balance matters. That evening, a quiet knock interrupted them. Room service. But Averin hadn't ordered anything. She opened the door, and her smile disappeared. Standing there, nervous, holding a bouquet of roses, was Calran, her ex-husband. Rennick stayed in the background, arms crossed, watching. Calran cleared his throat. I didn't know you were in town. Averin raised a brow. Yet you found me. I asked the hotel, said it was urgent. She stepped aside from the doorway, but didn't invite him in. You have 5 minutes. He looked surprised. That's it? Time is expensive now. Calran stepped in, his eyes darting to Rennick, then to the sketchbook on the desk, then back to Averin. I've been thinking a lot. I'm not interested in your regrets, she said calmly. He held out the flowers. She didn't take them. Look, I know what I did. I know how I hurt you. Do you? She said. Or do you miss the comfort I gave you while you gave nothing back? Rennick didn't move. He didn't interrupt. He just stood there, presence steady, quiet. Kauren's voice lowered. "I still care about you." Averin met his gaze. "You cared about convenience. That's not the same thing." He faltered. "I want to make things right." She tilted her head. "You're too late." "I already did." Kauren looked like he wanted to yell, but didn't. His ego wanted to fight. But the reality in front of him was louder. She wasn't angry. She was gone. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. He looked around once more. "This guy, is this really serious?" She answered plainly. "You don't get to measure what I have now by the lies you lived in." He stepped back, as if the weight of those words hit his chest. Rennick finally spoke. "I'll let you two finish. Averin, call me when you're done." She didn't blink. "Stay." That shook Kauren. She turned back to her ex. "We're done here." He looked at her with a mix of disbelief and desperation. "That's it?" "Yes. You're free to go." "I've already been free." Kauren didn't slam the door. He didn't leave a dramatic trail. He just walked out. And it was the first time in years that she didn't feel the need to chase closure. She was the closure. That night, she and Rennick ate dinner on the balcony. Same city skyline. But nothing else was the same. Rennick didn't ask what was said behind the door. He didn't ask her to explain her pain. He just passed her a bowl of fruit and said, "You look like yourself today." She breathed in. The breeze, the freedom, the realness of it all. I felt like myself too. Later, when the lights were low and the suite quiet again, Rennick stood behind her at the window. His voice barely above a whisper. "If you ever want to design a future from scratch, I'd love to be on that blueprint." Averin turned, not rushed, not emotional. She simply smiled. "You already are." They didn't check out the next morning. Averin extended their stay, quietly, without fanfare, not for indulgence, for completion. Something about the room, the city, and the way she'd reclaimed both demanded one last day. She needed to leave, but not rush. She needed to go, but not run. And Rennick, he didn't ask for anything. He only offered presence and patience. Rennick made her tea. She sketched by the window. They didn't speak much, but when she handed him the sketch pad, the page said, "You don't owe me gentleness, but thank you for giving it." He didn't write back. He drew a sun, a real one, with shadows, with corners, with a small heart inside the middle. She laughed when she saw it. It was silly. It was sweet. It was theirs. Averin walked into her first architectural meeting since the divorce that afternoon. Not for a job, not for a pitch, but to return the final proposal sketches she'd delayed turning in. It was symbolic. She handed over the files to the board and smiled. One of them, a woman in a plum-colored blazer, leaned forward. "You look steady." Averin tilted her head. "I feel that way." Another said, "We thought you moved to another city after the headlines." "I moved to a better story." They blinked, unsure whether it was sarcasm or strength. As she stepped out of the building, a stranger walked up, early 30s, clean-cut, nervous. "Ma'am, sorry. You're Averin Lorne, right?" "Yes." I know this is odd, but my sister used to follow your interior design blog before it went offline. She said your post about designing for dignity got her through a bad breakup." Averin blinked. That was years ago. She remembered. The man hesitated, then held out a folded paper. "She passed last winter. She left this in her journal. I was cleaning out her apartment and saw your name trending this week. Thought maybe you'd want to read what she wrote." Averin took the paper. The handwriting was smudged. The ink faded at the edges. "If I ever meet Averin, I won't thank her for her taste. I'll thank her for showing me that you can walk away from ruin, still beautiful." Her eyes stung, but she kept her voice even. "Thank you for bringing this." The man nodded and walked away quickly, as if afraid to make it awkward. Rennick was across the street, leaning on a black rental car, watching the exchange with quiet curiosity. When she crossed over, he simply asked, "Everything okay?" She held up the note. "I've never felt more seen." That evening, Rennick packed his small suitcase. "I've got to be back for a meeting tomorrow." Averin nodded. They stood by the door. No dramatics, but no emptiness either. He spoke first. "Thank you for trusting me." She replied, "Thank you for being trustworthy." He stepped closer. "Are we stopping here?" "No," she said. "Are we rushing forward?" "No." He leaned in. His lips didn't touch hers, just hovered near her cheek. "Call me when you want a real goodbye," she whispered. "Or when I want a real beginning." He left, not with distance, but with direction. The next morning, Averin returned to the suite, alone, one last time. The room had already been cleaned, but the balcony door was slightly open, as if welcoming one last breath. She stepped out, closed her eyes, remembered the version of herself who once sat here on an anniversary night, waiting for a man who never showed, who chose another. And then she opened her eyes to a completely different view. Same skyline, but this time it didn't dwarf her. She didn't feel abandoned. She felt anchored. On the glass table sat a folded note with hotel stationery, her name written in sharp, even strokes. She opened it. It was from Rennick. "The first time I saw you, you were looking out over this city like it owed you nothing, and now you stand here, owning your silence. I didn't fix you. I just witnessed your return to yourself." She pressed the note to her chest, then folded it again. She left the suite key beside it. No need for locks anymore. What mattered couldn't be closed off. Averin didn't go home yet. Not quite. She made one last stop before leaving the city, a small art supply store tucked between a deli and a laundromat on East 49th. The owner, an older woman named Myra, had once helped her pick brushes when she could barely afford pencils. Now, she walked in quietly. Myra looked up and gasped. "Averin?" Averin smiled. "Still here?" Myra grinned. "You made it look easy, vanishing like that." Averin walked to the same aisle she always went to. "I didn't vanish. I healed off camera." Myra stepped closer. "You always drew quiet power. Even your lines whispered confidence." Averin held up a new sketchbook. "Time to draw a louder life." Back outside, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Hello?" A pause. Then, a familiar voice. Her ex-husband. "Thought you changed your number." She said nothing. He continued. "I saw the news. You spoke at the Women's Network conference yesterday. They quoted you. They asked the right questions. I didn't know you'd be public again. You didn't expect me to rise." He inhaled slowly. "Averin, I'm sorry." She let the silence stretch. "You're apologizing to ease your guilt, not to return my dignity." "I already reclaimed that." He sounded smaller now. "Did you ever love me?" "I did. I just stopped once I saw myself clearly." Click. 2 weeks later, she moved into her new space. Not grand, not oversized, but hers. She painted one wall a soft terracotta and hung the sketch Rennick had drawn, the silly sun with the heart in the middle. It made her smile every morning. She didn't frame it with glass. She wanted to touch it when the days felt cold. On her desk sat the letter from the stranger's sister. Beside it, the folded note from Rennick, and a small card from Myra that read, "Never forget who found the color again." One Saturday, while unpacking a delivery, the buzzer rang. Rennick. He stood there, holding 2 coffees and a bag of pastries. "No flowers this time," she teased. "I brought substance. Flowers can lie. Bread doesn't." She laughed and let him in. They sat on the floor, eating on unpacked boxes. She noticed he kept looking around, checking if you regret downsizing. He shook his head. "I'm seeing how you finally fit a space built for you, not for someone else's status." She stilled, then softly said, "Stay a while." He didn't answer. He just stayed. Later that evening, it rained gently, not stormy, just soft enough to make the windows hum. She lit a single candle. No overhead lights. Rennick stood at the threshold of her bedroom. He didn't move closer. He waited. She looked at him from across the room, then reached her hand out. He walked in. No urgency, just reverence. They didn't speak. She let herself be held, not claimed. Held. And in that stillness, something profound happened. She stopped remembering the anniversary suite as a symbol of pain. It became something else. A turning point. A threshold. A place she walked through, not to escape, but to return to herself. They say when a woman chooses herself, the whole world shifts. But here's the truth. It doesn't shift instantly or loudly. It shifts in hotel rooms with silent confrontations, in folded notes left on balconies, in coffee on cardboard boxes, in gentle eyes that don't rush healing. Averin didn't plan to be a lesson, but she became one, not because she burned bridges, but because she crossed them barefoot and kept walking. She didn't get revenge, she got peace. And when the city whispered her name again, she smiled, because now she knew who was listening. Before you scroll away, take a moment with me. What if one quiet decision could change the entire trajectory of your life? Averin didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't burn down the suite. She stood. She walked. And she healed. In public, yes. But more importantly, in private. If you've ever felt dismissed, replaced, or silenced, know this. You don't need to win the loudest argument. You need to win your peace. Comment. I choose my peace if you believe walking away with your dignity is louder than staying with your pain. Subscribe if you want more stories that don't just entertain, but speak to something real in your life. Like this video if you felt even one moment of quiet strength resonate. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder. Sometimes the best comeback is no comeback at all. Thank you for watching Mr. Charles Stories. We'll see you in the next one.